Welcome to the first episode of Raid My Lab. So why am I doing this? You see, the year was 2017 and I was sick and I was in bed with the flu. And I stumbled across a guy named Julian Alette who simply opened his mail on YouTube, and it was fantastic. I watched him open up little electronics parts and doodads, and I finally went through his entire playlist and I couldn't get enough. So then I stumbled across some guy named Voltlog who's from a country where they open his mail, and he had these in the mail videos, and I learned a lot from that guy, but then I ran out of videos. And then I found another guy named Learn Electronics. His name's Paul. He has a video series called Slow Boat from China. And then Andrea Speece opening up his mail, and I was addicted. The problem is, I don't really need to buy very much stuff. I have a lot of stuff, and I thought, what if instead of buying a bunch of new stuff from AliExpress, I can open up the stuff that I already have? Mind blown. And a new series was born. It's time to raid my lab. Okay, so I raided my bin, and you can see I still have all of these other shields in here. But basically, if you talk about unique shields, I had 9 of them, and one of them might not be able to be considered a true shield. So I guess technically I look at a shield as something like this, and the way this works, this is an LCD shield on an Arduino Uno, and one of the things I love about it is that you get this just nice clean package. Everything just mates up. In fact, I'll take it apart. If you've never used a shield, they have pins that kind of, let me see if I can get in there, pins that kind of just backpack on the board above it or the board below it. So you can come in here and make sure all the pins are lined up and just pop it right on there, and you get this nice, cool, clean package. Now, this one doesn't really give you much access to the rest of the pins. Like when you use this shield, you've basically used up all your pins. But if you switch to something like an Arduino Mega, the shields still fit, except you get all of these extra pins around the back. So one of the things I love about shields is the versatility. You can go for total just clean package, or you can go for something that's easy with a whole bunch of extra pins. So let's take a look at what I have. Since I have this in my hand, at the end of the video, basically just to give you an idea of what I'm thinking, is that we're going to look at what it is, why I bought it, where I bought it, what it does, you know, those sorts of things. So these shields are very cool, and if you look at them, they have your standard 16:2 LCD, which if you've ever used one of these as a raw LCD in one of the kits, I think they require like 7, 8, 9 wires to hook up, and it's just a giant mess. So the idea of being able to just kind of pop this thing on is pretty sweet. And then you have your little potentiometer to adjust the brightness here, and then these things just scream thermostat. I mean, they have select buttons and, you know, left, right, up, down, BA start, reset buttons and all that kind of stuff. There are a few header pins broken out, I guess, out here that you could solder something to. I don't tend to do that, but there's a guy on the internet, and I'll find him. He made a nice menu system for this thing that's pretty sweet. So like if you want to go through your code, you can basically make a little user interface. And these things are like $2 or $3. At the end of the video, we'll go through buying all these things, but these are very, very cheap shields, and you get a lot for your money with this shield. The second one is one that has started to get a lot cheaper, and it's one that I use a lot more now. You can see it's got a couple pins bent at the top, but this is a 4 relay shield, and these are basically the same relays that you see. Well, no, they're a little lower. Okay, so these are 3 amp relays, where if I were to grab another relay, they're generally going to be good for 10 or 15 amps. So these are lower amperage relays, regardless of whether you're using AC, DC, 110, 220, or whatever. But and these things are not, as far as I can tell. Oops, I dropped it. It's already got bent pins. I guess we're fine. As far as I can tell, these are not opto-isolated, which means that there is a connection possible between your board and these relays, like a physical connection. So what I tend to use for these things are, again, they're very cheap. They've got 4 relays. They have these great terminal headers on here that you can just screw the wires in instead of using DuPont wires. I use these as switches. So basically, anytime I need to, I don't tend to run a lot of voltage on them. I don't use them to turn lights on and off. I use them for when I need to connect a wire, like maybe for a garage door opener or something like that. You know, this little couple dollar shield can control 4 garage doors, or you know, just basically simulating pushing a button is what I tend to use a lower end shield like this for. We're going to come back to these over here. This one is a little controversial. This probably would not be considered a shield, although I think they do make a shield version of it. You still hook a couple of wires up here, but it is called the TM1638 is basically how you would look this one up. And I just think it's really cool. For a couple of wires, you get 8 LEDs, 8 segments of LCDs, or you know, little 8-digit displays with the period in between each one, and you get 8 buttons. And I mean, you know, if you want to mess with these things, like I don't really love, like every kit comes with these little individual 7-segment plus the period displays, and I'm just not really a fan of working with those things. I just think they're a pain. But if you can get an LED, a segment, and a button times 8 for basically $2, like this is a very cool little device, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. I just stumbled across this one. I think it was the YouTuber Pile of Stuff who unboxed one of these in one of his videos, and basically what this is, they call it a Censar Shield. They get different terms. This one says YF Robot 2014. The idea with this is if you're making stuff and you're hooking stuff up to your Arduino, in general, unless you use a breadboard, you've got 1 or 2 grounds and a couple of 5 volts, but every single input you do needs 5 volts and ground and an input line and all that stuff. And so what this does is they basically break it out for every single pin. They give you your signal, your power, and your ground for all the pins. And it's just a very cool, quick prototyping. I don't use something like this for a permanent installation, but sometimes you're working, and I've got a ton. In fact, I'll grab a handful of them over here. I've got just so many of these DuPont wires that a lot of times it's just easier, rather than hooking them up to a breadboard, to go in there and just hook it straight to this, and you can just go power, ground, input right directly to the shield. This is one that I haven't really messed with. This is a CAN bus. For those of you guys that aren't familiar, CAN bus is primarily known for being in automobiles. There are people that use it for other industrial applications. Some people use it in their maker applications, but I have this older 2001 Astrovan that I've just kind of decided is going to be a hacking project, and so I bought this as an interface to my to the CAN bus of the van. See what I can do with that. This one here is hands down my favorite Arduino shield, and it's the Ethernet shield. It also has an SD card slot on it, which I basically never use, but it's the Ethernet shield. And you'll hear me say over and over again that if something is important, wire it. It's not that Wi-Fi is a terrible technology, but if it needs to run just forever, wire it. And so I love these things. They're going to give you a good, reliable signal. I have a couple of tips that we'll go over later in the video about using these shields, but they are just fantastic. They're fantastic for using for MQTT. And in fact, I would say that this shield is the one thing that keeps me on an Arduino as opposed to the ESP8266 or the ESP32. It's basically impossible to use Ethernet on 8266, and I've got some videos from a company called Olimex, and you can look in my videos for there, but I've got a few ESP32 boards, but they're really hard to come by. Let's go back up to this one. This is another one that I haven't had a chance to use yet, and that 5-pin connector is used in something called DMX, and DMX is generally, what I use it for is lighting controls, so like stage lighting. And basically this is, I think it's DMX 512, and what happens is you can hook up stage lights and basically daisy chain them together, and they have addresses. So let's say if you have a set of RGB stage lights, they might use channels 1, 2, and 3. Let's just say for simplicity, channels 1, 2, and 3 might be light number 1's red, green, and blue, and then the next one would begin on channel 4, and then so then like if you want to turn on all the red lights, you turn on channels 1, 4, you know, and so on. And so this is something to interface that with an Arduino. Haven't used it yet, but I got a steal on this. This was a higher end Shield, and I got them. I don't know if they were going out of business, but I just caught a steal on this on eBay. This next one is I've heard it called a Censar Shield. It's called some different names, but it's cool. It's got a reset button. It has a speaker. It has your 4 of your 7-segment displays. It has a potentiometer. This is a place, I believe this is for putting in, I think you can put in temperature sensors and maybe a gyroscope, LM35, DS18B20. There's some different sensors that are just kind of made to pop in here. You get 3 buttons and still get some access to some of your pins. What's it say there? That's a Bluetooth voice recognition. So I'm guessing that these were originally designed to be part of a kit, but they're pretty ubiquitous now. I also think there's some LEDs on there. But yeah, these are very cool. They're very cheap. And last but not least is one I stumbled across. I think this might be a volt log thing. But these batteries are called, I knew I was going to forget the number, like 16340, something like that. Yeah, 16340. So these are smaller than your standard 16550 batteries. And what's really cool about this is that this thing just pops on the top of your Arduino, and it's basically a battery backup, a battery where you can power the thing by including putting power out of the USB. So I haven't really found a good project for this yet, but these are rechargeable batteries. They're like 880, or they're labeled as 880 milliamp hour batteries, and so you can put a set of them and run your project. So I will be putting prices up for this stuff, and I'll come back with maybe a few demos. Okay, so I thought I'd go through Amazon and show you these products quickly. I will say, if you're going to buy them, it really helps if you use the links. I took the time to get links to all this stuff on both Amazon and AliExpress so that you can decide how you want to buy it. Some of you are outside of America, some of you are impatient, so I give you both options. The first one is that the one that's a Shield but not a Shield, $6 on Amazon and $1.56 at AliExpress. Links to both are in the description. The Ethernet Shield, I tend to use these 5100 ones. This is $9 here on Amazon and $4.74 on AliExpress. The DMX Shield is only recommended to buy from Amazon. It's basically the same price on AliExpress. You can search for one there if you can't get to Amazon, but 25 bucks. I think I paid like $7 for it on eBay on a sale. The Relay Shield, if you have a chance to buy something that's made by Key Studio, I pretty much always do. I think their stuff is generally quality. And I'll say one thing while we're looking at this stuff. I don't really trust the reviews for this type of stuff on Amazon. I just generally assume that the people don't know what they're talking about, so I just ignore them. But so this is $7.76 on Amazon or $2.50 on AliExpress. The Battery Shield is $7.99 on Amazon, and let's see, it is $3.40 on AliExpress. The multi-sensor shield that you can hook up to grounds and all that kind of stuff is $9.80 on Amazon, and you can get it for $2.75 shipped on AliExpress. The CAN bus is $17.99 on Amazon, and you can get it for $7.50 on AliExpress. And two more. The multifunction Proto Shield is $6.19 right here on Amazon, and you can get it for $2.90 on AliExpress. And last but not least, another chance to buy something Key Studio is that LCD screen with the keypad, and that is $8.24 here or $2.50 for a similar one on AliExpress. Regarding that menu system for the LCD Shield, there's a guy named Pavel Bandoltov who has made a really cool system. He's got the code linked and everything where you can learn a little bit about how to interact with that thing and with that shield and have a nice multi-level menu system. So that link will be in the description. Okay, so I said I would give you a tip, and I can't replicate the problem on this particular one. I don't happen to have a crappy enough power supply. But one thing I've found is that especially on long Ethernet runs, you'll hook up one of these things and these lights they'll all come on and then they'll all go off. And it's pretty much like on, off, at about that kind of pace to it. And I would say that 99 times out of 100, that is a bad power supply. And not necessarily a power supply that doesn't work, but one that just does not supply enough juice to allow this thing to make a handshake. Now in this situation, my switch is maybe 30 feet from where we're plugged in right now, but on longer Ethernet cords, I've found that these things just don't have the power. So a lot of times you'll use something like one of these junky AliExpress power supplies and you just won't get the power. And I've also thought that you could get more power by plugging it in through the barrel jack, and that doesn't work either. It just generally takes a quality power supply. So if you're seeing that issue, that is a quick thing to troubleshoot, is try a shorter cable or a different power supply. So I hope you enjoyed Raid My Lab, and I will see you next week.